What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Today I am joined by my friend Randy because I have enlisted him for his help on this particular project. So as I'm sure you figured out by now from the title of the video and the thumbnail, that particular mod that we're going to be talking about today is the wooden front panel for my newest build in the Phanteks EVOLV mATX case. Now, incorporating wood into a custom build is something I've been wanting to do for a while, but up until recently I hadn't really figured out the best way to incorporate it into one of my projects. Now, I've seen some builds in the past where people have tried to incorporate wood or have actually built an entire case out of wood, and to be honest, none of them have really been that impressive. I just haven't seen it done right, so I knew that if I was going to do it, I wanted to make sure I had just the right idea that would turn out showing off the sort of quality and aesthetic value that I was going for. So the first step was choosing a case that I felt would complement any wooden component that I would decide to incorporate into this build. And ultimately I decided that the Phanteks EVOLV, which with its mix of aluminum panels and tempered glass, would be a nice overall aesthetic to not only complement the wood, but then also give us sort of a mix of different premium materials with the wood, the aluminum, and the tempered glass. After choosing the case, the next step was figuring out how to incorporate the wooden component into the build, which I decided was going to be a wooden front panel, and I knew that I wanted to use some sort of premium wood. I was leaning towards walnut, but that's where Randy comes into play. Randy is, for lack of a better term, I'm going to call him a master fabricator. He does amazing work with a lot of unique materials. A lot of really neat one-off projects and pieces where he uses premium woods like, I don't know, maybe premium's not the right word, but anyway, more unique type of stuff. And I'm actually going to go ahead and link his Instagram profile in the description below so you guys can check out some of the cool work that he does. But I knew that with his skills in working with wood, I would rather have him take on the task of fabricating this panel so that it would have the quality that I was looking for. And I'm going to go ahead and let him sort of explain how he was able to sort of create this front panel that you guys are going to see mounted on the case. So here's the case with the stock front panel on, and this is just to show you guys sort of how this mounts to the chassis and sort of go over some of the goals for the new front panel here. So one of the things to point out is that this panel is sort of recessed behind the top panel and the bottom foot piece. So that's going to give us a little bit of room to work with because obviously we're not going to get a piece of wood this thin. So it's going to have a little bit more thickness to it. I presume it's probably going to poke out even a little bit from here, which is okay. I think what we'll do is we'll bevel the edges to sort of give it an interesting look. And then we're not going to be bending the wood to match this profile, which is okay because my goal is that if the wood stays flat, for one, it will allow you to see it more from the side, and two, rather than tucking up against the inner panel here, hoping that even just by sticking out a little bit, it's going to give us a little bit better airflow through the front, which has been somewhat of a complaint when it comes to these EVOLV cases not having the greatest airflow. Now I'm going to scrap this section down here, and I'm not worried about front panel connectors. My goal is to go for the cleanest look possible, so we're going to maintain the same general shape and size of this front panel with the cut-ins on the sides, but for the most part the panel is going to be flat with no other lines to sort of interfere. No LED light, no opening down here, no door up here obviously. Just going to be one nice solid piece of wood aside from the cutouts on the side, because I still do want to keep somewhat of that signature, you know, Phanteks look for the front and facilitate airflow, but also, you know, kind of clean it up a little bit by just having, you know, a basic solid front panel. Now, one of the other reasons that I chose this particular case for the project is because of how the front panel actually mounts to the case. These are metal brackets, which is nice, and they're screwed on. So I'm going to be able to detach these two brackets from the stock front panel and just reattach them to the wooden panel, which is not really a feature that you find on most cases. Most cases, it's all one integrated plastic piece that kind of snaps into the front. It's very rare that you actually have tooling on these panels that allow you to sort of disassemble them and, in our case, sort of reuse these mounting brackets on a different piece of material. All right, guys, so here she is, the finished walnut front panel for the build. Now, keep in mind, this is under a pretty bright light, so you guys probably won't be seeing the same color and darkness that I see, but this gives you a good idea of the grain pattern, and we can pick up on a lot of the details. So I'm going to go ahead and let Randy explain sort of the process he went through to create the panel. I think it turned out awesome. He did a great job sort of matching the size and shape of the OEM panel. But Randy, why don't you go ahead and just take us kind of through the process of what you had to go through for this?
Well, this came out of a slab. It was about 2 inches thick, and we'd remilled it down for another project and had a thinner piece. So when Tony came to me and said that he needed a new front panel, and we discussed the thickness, this piece came right to mind. From there, I went back and looked through the stock in the shop to find just the right piece that had some grain movement, made it something interesting that would be cool to look at. From there, laid out the stock one on here, cut a rough size to it, drew it up along the edges, and then started working to get it down to the correct size and shape. Once I got it sanded down and in a pretty good shape, brought it down, we did a quick test fit, and then knocked out the side notches, you want to call them, and got the final shape set up. From there, did the chamfers on the sides, gives a nice clean look, allows air to flow into the case a little cleaner. And from there, it was a matter of finishing. Sanded it down to a 220, and then applied 2 coats of natural Danish oil, letting each one sink in, and then after giving it 3 days for it to totally soak into the walnut, took it into the spray booth and sprayed 2 coats of a satin clear on it to seal it up and make sure it's protected from whatever may be dished out at it for the rest of its life.
Yeah, probably the only thing it's going to have to be protected from is maybe a little saliva that comes flying out of my mouth when I'm yelling at people online when I'm playing Overwatch, but I think aside from that, maybe a little bit of dust and we should be good. So
I thought it was just going to be from you drooling on it.
Well, that's kind of already happened. That was behind the scenes. So the next step is, I've actually already got some of it masked off here, but we need to go ahead and remove the mounting hardware from the OEM panel, and obviously we need to make sure that our tolerances are correct, and then get that mounted on here, which we're going to be able to just use machine screws and attach it here. And once we do that, we should be able to just pop it into place. So we'll do that and cross our fingers that we get our measurements right, and we'll go from there. All right, so here we go. We've got the mounting hardware mounted to the back of the panel. Unfortunately, the masking tape, and it was a light hold, took off a little bit of the finish, but it's on the back side of the panel, so it's not that big a deal. But I did have to make sure that I very carefully measured out where these holes needed to be so that the panel would line up properly. But from what I can tell, everything has worked out very well, and the last thing to do is to mount it into place and see how she looks. Man, I almost don't even know what to say. Yeah, this thing looks amazing. I don't even think it's going to look as good on camera as it does in person, but I'm just happy everything worked out the way that I planned. And you guys are going to have to forgive me for not having this side panel on over here and having cables hanging out. Since this is just a temporary build, I haven't done any major cable managing back there, but I think you can get a pretty good idea. The tolerances are pretty much dead on, and it looks awesome. Now maybe this isn't your thing, maybe you don't like the look of wood, but this walnut is beautiful. And I want to show you too, as I suspected, by not following the contour, of course we wouldn't have been able to do that anyway, but by not having the panel dip in like the stock panel, you get a much better air gap here for what I would assume would be drastically improved airflow. I doubt I'm going to take the time to compare, temperatures with the stock front panel and this one. I think we can pretty, safely assume that this gap is quite a bit more substantial than what you would normally get. But I also like the idea that you can see the panel from the side view, so you can catch that, that wood grain. But yeah, the dark, rich finish of the walnut compared to the silver aluminum, and then of course the dark tempered glass. It's really nice, guys. I hope that you guys enjoyed this here. Maybe inspired some of you guys to try a similar project. But yeah, I would say just if you're going to attempt doing anything with wood, just make sure it's done right. I've seen too many projects with wood that just looked gaudy, or the quality just did not look like it belonged. But I'm really happy with the way this turned out. I hope you guys are too. As always, if you have any questions or feedback, leave them in the comments section below, and I'll see you guys in the next video.